Welcome,
Okay.
everybody.
Welcome.
Um, this is our part 4 of 6 in a webinar series highlighting the farmland transition model known as Farmland Commons. So if you've been following along, you've been hearing the story of Blue Rock Station and the Blue Rock Farm Commons, and we're continuing that story. But if you've missed some of the previous webinars, I am going to drop the link in the chat so you can grab that and see the previous webinars on YouTube, and review them and share them with folks as we get the word out of this great work happening in Southeast Ohio and throughout the country too. My name's Denise. I am an educator with Central State University Extension. I am hosting the webinar series, and I'm also very excited to be a resident of the county where this great story is unfolding. And it is my pleasure to turn this webinar over to our guests.
Okay, well, I guess I'm a guest, although it feels like I've been here a few times before. So, and I do want to introduce Eduardo Sandoval, who's up in the corner with his mic turned off, and he is has been an intern and a long-term friend and supporter of Blue Rock Station. Eduardo, you want to say something about yourself?
Yeah, so basically, like Annie said, I was an intern in 2016 at Blue Rock Station. And then from there, just been involved with a variety of different engagements at Blue Rock Station. It really transcended from a mentorship into friendship, I like to say. I feel like this is a big part of my personal community. It's really given me a lot of friendships, a lot of great network opportunities. It's been a big catalyst for, not only my professional life, but also my personal life. So really close to home with Blue Rock Station and all these people. So yeah, thank you, Annie.
Yeah. And then I don't want to miss an opportunity to introduce Christina Villa and Ian McSweeney. You have something you want to add before we get started?
I am grateful to be here. I'm grateful to play a part in this work, and I'm so inspired by you, Annie, and you, Christina.
Thank you. Christina, give us your 2 cents, and then we'll just spin right out.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Christina, co-executive director of the Farmers Land Trust. I live in Middle Tennessee, and I am so inspired by and humbled by the farmland commons that are in development all over the country, and they all hold a place near and dear to my heart. But really, the Blue Rock Farmland Commons, working with Blue Rock Station and working with Annie and getting to work with Eduardo and the full team of everything that's happened is just more meaningful than I can tell you all. So honored to get to be a part of this.
Thank you. Well, so I want to start out by pointing out in this first slide where it says Blue Rock Station. So this is so typical of our work there. So this is an old satellite dish that I drug home, Jay saying, what in the hell are you going to do with that? And I said, I'm going to make a sign. And Sarah Holtzclaw painted this sign for us. And actually, it has a lot of meaning because all those words that are down below, and then there were some that hung on the fence, this is the route we took in life. All the towns that I was raised in, Jay was raised in, and then all the towns we lived in. And then you'll see right in the middle, it says 1993. And that is the year that we bought the land at Blue Rock Station. And then there were some more places we lived, and then there's Blue Rock Station. And so this is so typical of really this story. And that is that it's about a lot of people and a lot of thinking and a lot of diverse opportunities. And I love that. I would love to put the sign back together, but it only has meaning to me. So it's really great. Anyway, so I think what we're supposed to talk about tonight is really the story of how did we go from where we were in terms of being a farm and an agritourism site and a site where people came sometimes just to find their way. And and to say, all right, we're going to take this farm and we're going to do something else with it. So our goal has always been to utilize our resources as investments in people, and particularly young people, because my personal attitude is the old farts have had their chance, and I'm an old fart myself, so I can say that. And so the really exciting work and the really exciting relationships for me are, as Eduardo pointed out, being an intern and being involved and living with us. And so early on, I think around 2020, it might have been just before that, I was starting to think about what would happen if I had to leave the farm. Now, I never intended to leave. I thought I would die there. And I say that in all sincerity, and would have been thrilled to death for that to happen, like really far from now, but definitely I wanted to die there. And so I was on a webinar done by the the Farm Animals Concern Trust, and Ian McSweeney was speaking. And it just occurred to me, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, it's like the first time I heard about airships, I just looked at my baby granddaughter and said, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, sometimes you just know that's the right thing. And so then I formed an former intern board that was starting to help me develop programming, and they'd already created the goat stock reunion that we have in the summer, where everybody comes and we do tie-dye. And sometimes we used to have speakers and things like that. One year we had the Green Cemetery folks come. That was interesting. And so we started to move forward, and Ian came online, I think right after COVID, and spoke to everybody. And of course, people got upset because they think I'm going to die. And I was like, well, not today anyway. And to me, it was an insurance policy to begin to think about how we could take what we had done all along, investing in others, and then take this biggest tool that we had in our toolbox, which was the land, and invest in more people, in more situations where we could sort of up our game and up our ante, to say, hey, we could, turn federal tax code into a new way of thinking about agricultural land. That's been, to me, very exciting. So then I met Christina on a webinar put on by Women Food and Agriculture Network, who are one of the groups that are involved now to oversee the farm and how it will continue as a commons. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to get more serious about that. And then I broke my leg. So that then changed everything. And the thing that was exciting to me, and also incredibly devastating, was that I had this opportunity to do something worthwhile. But then, being who I am, I drove Eduardo nuts about this, because I tried to get him involved with the board and he was having none of it. So I said, look, we're gonna move the farm into this commons, and I need you to participate. I've said that before, it didn't do any good. But for some reason, he decided that he could participate. And I just want to say, before I kind of turn it over to you, Eduardo, for a bit, is the value of Eduardo's participation. I don't want to blow it up too much, but the reality is he just blew me away. When he came and we're all meeting with the wannabe farmers, and he's sitting there talking about the feminine, and how this is, at one point I realized I just could sit back, because somebody was talking about what they were going to do, and it was so far away from what had been pitched as this is where we have to be. And Eduardo said, look, this is for somebody who doesn't have access to land. That is completely what this is about. And I just went back and sat back and went, oh my God, where has this guy been? So anyway, That's why it's so valuable, why this process is so valuable, because it gives opportunity, engages people at a different level. And I would say that that's true in terms of not just Eduardo, but the other folks that have been involved as well. And then everybody who came the day that we realized who was going to be the next farmer. So Eduardo, you got something to say?
Yeah, basically everything you said is true. I didn't really want any part of this, to be quite honest. Not because I didn't support this project, but because I wasn't sure what I had to offer. And I guess I think my biggest contribution was just being able to look at the whole process through the lens of being on both sides, being, the part of the board team, I suppose, or the vetting committee, and then also being the person that is looking for that opportunity to have land access, because that has been me for a very long time. Um, and I think through that journey, I it was strange because I saw myself in the like seat of the person being interviewed so many times, where sometimes they would have a very I don't know, completely kind of mythical idea of how it could all work, and had the greatest expectations. And I think that is it's super easy to romanticize farming, living on a homestead, living, in in a sustainable manner. But through my experience of being exposed to those type of environments, understanding the level of commitment, dedication, the ability to build a team, which I think is essential, having community, being able to communicate with your community, being able to, I think most importantly, be honest about your capacity, about what you can take on and what you can't. I think all those things, one, you can't really even begin to weigh those things against your search for land, because it's just so hard to even get your feet on the ground with something. I mean, part of the, whole purpose of this is to help connect farmland with people who otherwise would not have easy access. And I think maybe Christina and Ian could speak more on that, but that's what really sold me was, actually, specifically, we were at the OFA conference together. That's where I first met Ian and Christina, and where they kind of really told me about what they were doing and what they were wanting to do with Annie and with Blue Rock Station. And essentially it was just that, is helping connect people who do not have land access due to whether it's a financial burden or just don't have a direct connection, don't know where to even start, sometimes helping facilitate that connection between the next generation of hungry, really kind of ready farm, young farmers that want to get into the field, and then the landlord or landowners rather, sorry, that aren't necessarily older, but in this case, are essentially having to look at their capacity to maintain a very much alive property that again takes so much dedication, so much hard work, so much day-to-day engagement. And at some point, you just have to be honest and say, there comes a time where you can't do it. In Annie's case, I think that moment was when she broke her leg, and I think the really so it seems like it was all divine timing. But I think when I saw that again, when I saw that and saw the team that was being built between the farmers, land trust, and Annie and Blue Rock Station and that community, I felt like, yeah, this is it. This has definitely got the potential to be something special.
Okay, just want to say it did not feel divine at all. But I get what you're saying, because it just seemed to it should fit. And so I want to talk a little bit about the process, because it was laborious. I mean, we were inventing something. And when you invent things, you can make really awful mistakes. And so what I had decided early on, being a project management kind of person and setting goals, was that I would do a few things that might be helpful. One is that I created a booklet. And in this booklet, I gave one to every single person that we interviewed. And in this booklet, there was a lot of really good information. So there's a picture of me showing the booklet to Julia Flint, who has become a friend. She's one of the women that we interviewed. And this is the booklet itself. So that is just a little map that we had drawn in the first year we were there when we were teaching people how to do websites and things. And it had a lot of material. It had it had a forest management plan and an appraisal for what the forest is worth now. And it had old photos and newspaper articles and things about when we were on MTV, and it showed our 10-year plan, our original 10-year plan, and then also the latest 10-year plan. So, and then we also had a list of all the things that we do each month when we say this is what we do on the farm in January, February, March, and more of a project management piece. And then we also had a list of all the plants that we produce, propagate with, or whatever. So this was a good overview, and I felt like it gave us a place to begin and also material for the family to take home. I frankly do not remember how many people we interviewed, but I think over the course of time, it was either 12 or 14 people.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so then Sam Tenenbaum, who was with the Women, Food and Agriculture Network Board, was at one of the times, Christina was there too, where we did that first set of interviews. And she came up with a vetting system, which we thought would be really helpful. And it was somewhat helpful.
So Annie, before we get into that, do you want to talk about the application process too? Because before we get into like the actual like people showing up to interviews.
All right. So in the application, people could go in and fill out a form that I created that basically gave us a little bit of background about their experience, and their ideas about things. That's mainly what I was interested in, because frankly, I was 52 when I came to live on the land and be the full-time farmer. So I wasn't that concerned about what they didn't know. I wanted to know what they thought they knew, and I wanted to know their aspirations, because aspirations are what get you through. I wanted to know how they did they have an attorney? Have they dealt with attorneys? Had they dealt with lawyers, not lawyers, accountants, just to look at the overall sense of who was this person and what was their experience, far beyond just, I know how to put a seed in the ground, or I know how to cut down a tree. And so we sent out information, and we started having people apply. And then I had decided that in March, so this is just a year ago, that we would have a day. And fortunately, Christina came, Eduardo came, Sam Tenenbaum, here she is, and in her hat, looking very spiffy as the orchard person that she is. And also that the woman sitting on the hearth there is our farm manager, Sam Bowers. And Sam was great. She showed people in and out and talked to them, and she had some really good things to share with us. And she's a very quiet person most of the time, but she asked some really tough questions, because I remember somebody saying about all these things that they were going to do, and it was like this bottomless list. And I know we were all sitting there going, oh, we're going to be polite and listen, but this is hopeless. And they had all these things they were going to do with animals. And Sam said, well, Annie, I have a question. And it's like, okay. And she says, do you have any experience with any of those animals? And they were like, no. And so we tried not to laugh, but that was great. And everybody had great questions. And so we had this one day, and then of course there was a lot of time on the phone with people. Some people I just completely dismissed. And then we had a second day and then there's some pictures of pretty much, I think somewhere in here, there's some pictures of the other people that were involved, because Deb Wagner's in there, and people that were served on the committee later. But anyway,
Eduardo,
Deb
do you want
Wagner.
to say anything else about the interviews before I move on to the vetting committee slide?
Yeah, well, one, I was gonna ask Andy, it might be helpful to clarify on the people that you immediately dismissed, why, or what distinguished someone that you're immediately dismissing and then are going to entertain with this interview process, because this isn't like necessarily even the, kind of final decision-making process. This is just to get to know somebody, but you do have to narrow it down, because clearly, again, this is a rare opportunity, and a lot of people are looking for these type of opportunities. I think there's a lot of young people or people who just haven't had that chance to get on a property to see out all their visions and ideas, and are hungry for this. So who are the people that, at least as it pertains to this project, were just like, no way? And then who
Maybe
would you
don't
like,
say
all
their
right,
names. Maybe just
not
like
the names,
here.
just, yeah, I didn't mean their names, but
Okay,
just
just let
in
me
general,
say,
like
the counselor,
what that looked like, yeah.
Okay, the counselor in me has completely forgotten their names, so we're safe.
Yeah.
Anyway, so before I answer that, I want to say that I recognize that it took a tremendous amount of courage for people to put themselves out there. And also, I also know I can be very intimidating just because I'm a bold person and a confident person. And so I want to honor their courage. But there were people that called up, and frankly, I would say what it came down to is they started telling me, they started bossing me. And I was like, wait a minute, you don't understand. This is not the role that I am playing here. I am in charge, and this is the way it has to work. And if it can't work that way, well, then c'est la vie. So that it was just an attitude. And people are good at faking it. We saw I would say, some real mental illness in some of the people that we interviewed that second time. And I got to give Deb and Eduardo credit, because they saw it all too. But we did ask serious questions, and at that point, after we did the second group, I was frustrated in that I realized that the vetting form that we had wasn't going to give us the information we needed. And the goal was, the system was that we would have these interview times, and then we would rate everybody. So we try to take the emotion away and use this vetting system to sort of narrow down who would be the best candidates. And then we would have an online Zoom meeting with the top 2 or 3. That was the plan. And we did stick to that, and it did work. But the thing that happened that was really great is that as soon as we got done with the second group, one of the people that had been interviewed was still there, and we just loved him, but we knew it wasn't going to work, but we loved him. And so we took him to dinner in town, and we all went into town, and that turned out to be quite nice. But then I said to Eduardo, we got to come up with a form that I used to use, which looks at people in a different way. It places value on the things that employers would look for if they were really good employers. So it looks at work ethic, it looks at their passion, are they on time, what's their ability to deal with people, and give an example of a time that you've dealt with somebody, who was angry or inappropriate or whatever, and how did you manage that? And so I said to Eduardo, all right, I'm going to reconfigure that form tonight before I go to bed. And then in the morning, before you leave, you'll have to get up early, which was a crusher. And we'll lay this form on every single person that we've talked to. And that's what we did. And it was a game changer for us. It took away all the emotion because frankly, one of the couples that was in the mix were really dear friends of Eduardo's. And
Okay,
so that,
sorry, just a bit. Okay, before we get into the scoring stuff, so because we'll
Okay.
move on to the scoring, but really quick, so someone has a question about 2 items. So where did you choose to advertise just the applicants and the application and like this opportunity, and also how many inquiries did you get? So those are questions that would be perfectly timed and answered in this section. And also, I just want to say, I know I'm not co-presenting, but I just have to jump in because I was there for one of the days of interviews, and I am really struck by how much energy it takes to host those interviews and deal with that many people and be on the phone and show people around. And Annie, the amount of energy that you have and we're showing and giving so much care to every single person. I remember Eduardo being like, this is wearing me out, I'm tired. But Annie was just like so capable and kept going. So just have to mention that it takes so much time and energy, and Annie really gave it all she had, and it was a lot.
I'm back. I don't know why I got kicked off. Anyway, so what I was getting at is we really did then have a system that was going to help us find this person. So time went on and we were going to have a meeting, and then I get this call from a couple that had just found out about it from Molly Loans, who is a friend of Carrie Starr's and mine. And
Annie, real quick, and you were gone for a second, but people want to know where were we advertising for days?
Okay, well, so I put things online with OFA, which is the Ohio Organic Farm Association. I put things with Rural Action, so that's really the big game in Southeast Ohio. And we really had thought it would be great if we could find somebody who was from within the region. So I didn't push beyond that, although I did have a couple of people from out of state who were coming back to Ohio after they had lived somewhere else that were interested. But we did not interview them because it wouldn't have worked. So, and the reason it wouldn't have worked is because they were just too far along in where they were. They needed to go somewhere else. It wasn't going to work. So anyway.
Yeah. Part of
Okay.
that too was that they're asking how many inquiries we had. And I think we said about, in total serious ones, it was like probably more than 20, around 20.
No, I wouldn't say that many. I gave many people the benefit of the doubt, but I think we interviewed 12, and I think there were probably 3 other couples, and maybe it's close to 20. 3 other couples. Yeah, because we did interview people who came by themselves, which it became clear that that really wasn't going to work. So, yeah. Anything else happened while I was gone? Any earth-shattering things? Nothing.
I think people just are asking about, the financial requirements for an applicant, and is that something that we wait on, which I think we'll get to as we progress, but essentially yes, right? Because part of the issue is a lot of these people that were coming in, the idea is that we wanted to connect them to farmland because they were financially, incapable of accessing farmland on their own. So it wasn't necessarily like a financial issue as much as it was, what's your ability to access farmland in a reasonable way without getting into a lot of debt? Would you say that's true, more or less?
Yeah, well, the thing is, there was not going to be money exchange. What we were valuing was a lot of other skill sets. That's why I said when we looked at the vetting form, And when we switched everything and began to look at work ethic and things like that. But it's also why we wanted to know, have you ever used an attorney? Have you ever been with an accountant? We wanted to know, what are the skills this person brings beyond what people might normally look at? Like, do you know how to use a hammer or an axe? Or, okay, people can learn that. But if they came with these other abilities, those were skills that were going to carry them through in the long run, because those are things that are really intimidating. Um, so, and also, it was never about money in terms of what we were looking at. Did they have money or not have any money? There was not, that wasn't the exchange. The exchange is all these other things. And the one thing is, the two things I think that were vital were, one is they had to demonstrate they had the support of other people for them to come onto the land. So it couldn't just be one person. I mean, I have been the farmer. When my granddaughter was there, it was a lot easier for me. But once she left, it was, I was it. And I did have interns in the summer, and that was great. But it was my gig. And we know, especially in the wintertime, if you're going to do kidding or you have livestock, it's really vital to have support. So we did have some people who were interesting to us, but they could not demonstrate the support from either bringing other people onto the land to support what they were doing or their families. One woman even said, when they asked about the dog, because the dog was really the bottom line for me in terms of his job was there at that farm and he had to stay there. And although I would have loved to have taken him with me, but that wouldn't have been fair to him. And she said, well, we'll get somebody to come and check on him and everything. And that is when you, Eduardo, very firmly said, that is not going to work. This is about having access to land. This is about coming onto the land and taking care of the land. And that was so impressive to me, really impressive to me. So, so that was the thing. We're thinking about this differently. We're not looking at this person as we tend to do in our culture, is what is their ability for us to sell them something? This is America. We're always looking to see, what can we sell you? We weren't selling them anything, and we weren't asking them to give us money. We're saying what we want and what we value is what you bring to the table as a human being. That's a game changer. And so you can see the first rubric is here, where it says the farmer vetting rubric, and that looks at a variety of things. But the real one that really changes a lot of our thinking in the process during this was this rating the applicant page. This gave us the ability to just take emotion completely out of the mix. So one thing that happened, and I am a believer that the universe provides, it's happened too many times in my life not to believe it, is that I get this call from Sarah and Jason Ricks saying that Molly had told them to get in touch. And because it was Molly, I said, okay. I didn't want to do it. I was really tired. I had already started moving farm items to another location.
They came later in the game, right? Sarah and Jason.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We'd already done all these others. We had laid these forms down on everybody, and we had the list. And anyway, so I said, I gave in. And I said, okay, you come. And this is the truth. They never sat down. I never even asked them to sit down. It was just this ongoing conversation. And one thing that happened, I just kept hearing Christina, who was saying, this is about women's leadership and the men who support them. And so we're in the kitchen, and Sarah's trying to find her words, and she was very nervous and everything. And the kids were very quiet, but they were being really respectful. They weren't like pacing or, like, come on, let's go kind of thing. And Sarah started to tell me something, and Jason said, wait a minute. He said, I know I'm talking for you, but just be patient with me. And he said, look, she wanted to have kids and raise the kids at home, and she wanted to be home with the kids. And so, but this is her moment now. This is for her. This is her dream. And I want to support that dream with everything I have. She supported my development of my career. So, I could have just eaten out of the palm of their hands, because this is the relationship I hope for everybody, is that kind of support. And so I didn't say anything, because I needed to lay the rubric down on them as well. I wasn't going to just jump to conclusions. But I was grateful that I had found the energy to do that last interview, because those are the people who became the farmer family. And it also was a really big deal for me personally, in that it represented, just as I started this whole conversation at the beginning of the webinar, saying investing in young people. So here were these two people, their early 40s, and then they have these two amazing kids. One was 14 and one was 11 at the time, and incredibly talented, because I didn't know that. I just thought, this is intergenerational wealth, and we are about to make it happen if this family becomes the farmer. And that became really what was in my head. And so we developed this committee of people, and we had some conversations. The people who are in this picture were all part of a committee, and they have a long story, except for Sam, a long history with Blue Rock Station as interns, as students. And they gave input. They looked at all the scores and everything, and then they said who they wanted. And so the next thing happened was that we had goat stock. That was in July, the first part of July. And everybody came. We had a great turnout, and BBC Storyworks was there filming the film that they created for us. And we sat down with both of the families. We had a lot of people come on Friday night, the day before goat stock, and meet them. My neighbors who had never been on my land came. I could have fainted, because they wanted to meet the people that might be the next farmer. I was just like totally in shock. And then they started to talk to me about their parents and how they would like to talk to Ian, because they don't know what to do with their farm. Just like, the world has a crazy way of just evolving. I'll put it that way. So these are the two families that we were looking at. And so I had them come and do a work day with me, because I wanted to see, are they bullshitting each other? Are they bullshitting me? You can be nice in front of people, but what happens when you're working together and you have to share tasks and all that? And they both had great work ethic. They worked hard. They were innovative. They kept saying, what else do you have to do? And that was great. And the kids were great. They just pitched right in, and they carried those heavy rocks with me. And, they were both great families. They really were. But the gift that came was shortly after these two work days was when we had goat stock, and all the people came to, sit around and hear them. This is the meeting right here at the Overlook. And they came to hear, what do they have to say? And I remember Mona, who is now the attorney for the Commons, saying to me, I changed my mind about who I want to support. And I was relieved, because I thought, oh my God, I didn't want dissension. I didn't want it to come down to there's this side and that side. And because it's never been like that at Blue Rock Station. We've made a lot of decisions with lots of people involved in decisions. We've had lots of, like when Trump got elected in 2016, we had this huge weekend thing where former interns and their friends came and cried, and and we talked about hope, and we actually used some of that vetting form to show them what skills they actually had, that they didn't need to feel like they were in a hopeless place. And so they're sitting in this picture, a lot of them. And what really happened was the other couple announced that they had to withdraw because it was too overwhelming. It was too much for them at that moment. And that was really a gift for them, but a gift for us. And they were lovely. They stayed and partied with everybody. And um, it was such a joy, but their relationship has continued. I know one of the people that's been involved is getting married, and she's going to use, as we always say, the other Sarah. That's what it always came down to, the other Sarah. The other Sarah is going to be doing the flowers for the wedding. So this is exactly what we hope for. Julia Flint, who I mentioned in that picture, has continued to stay in touch. She just released a book, and she's been to see me, and she's done some help, has helped me with some of my gardening and different things in Marietta. And so this is what we hope for. And this process has continued in that vein. And it might not work for anybody else. It might not work at all, but I think it can work. I think it's a process of saying, involve the right people, value their opinion, get the right advisors, like with Christina and Ian, and even Mona, who had practiced law for a very long time. And Jay and I kept forcing her back into the picture and saying, look, could you do this? Could you do that? And she did renew her bar membership and everything. And it's been a joy to watch her participating, guiding. She has all this historic, that's the thing, the historic view that people bring to this. That's why I said with Eduardo and the others, when they would start to talk with the potential farm families, I just felt like I could just sit back and wait, because they understood what we were trying to do. And it wasn't a thing of, we're going to do this because it's going to be exactly as Blue Rock Station, or it's exactly as Annie has done it. It is a story of farmer coming onto the land to steward the land and protect the land. And that's the value of this process, I think. So then we did a lot of networking. All of us did a lot of networking. And we got onto the front page of Farm and Dairy. We made the big time. We are now celebrities. We will sign autographs after this webinar. And I had people stop me and go, oh, you're a rock star now. I was like, no, the picture is of them. They're the rock stars. They're the brave people. They're the ones being courageous. And this was taken the day that they came to work. And it's funny because I kept saying, I need to document this. I really want to document this. And of course, this picture has been everywhere. So the day that at Goatstock, when it became clear that the other couple was going to pull out, it's interesting to me that we all just assumed that these would be the people. We didn't draw back and say, we got to keep going and trying or whatever. We just said they met some of the criteria we wanted them to meet, and we're going to put our cards on the table with them. And, they're really, really good people, wonderful, wonderful parents, wonderful children. They got everything it takes to move this whole thing forward. We just have to do our job and get out of the way and offer mentoring and support when we can. But and that exists in the system that's set up with them through the board that will be, reviewing what they're doing, and the people that have put together the lease agreements and all that stuff. They've got the support. And I appreciate that, because I did not have that kind of support. I was always looking to people to say, what do you think? How does that work? And I got it wrong sometimes, maybe more than sometimes, but people were kind. They didn't always point it out. So anyway, so that's really the story. And then, the other thing for me was I did not want to be in the way of them getting every possible advantage. And that's when I realized that day sitting there at Goat Stock, and it was clear they're going to be the farmer. I got to move. I have to move. Because if they don't have the rest of this year to start to lay down what they need to do and sit down and just be on the land and say, what does this mean to us and the skills we have to that, and what do we need to develop? Then they're going to be another whole year to try to even just get that basic stuff. So it's been hard on me emotionally, especially, but I think I made the right decision. And I based that on my conversations with them, my conversations with the children. We just met up at the library a week or so ago because their daughter, Cora, who's incredibly talented, who said, I will be 13 this year. So adorable. It's not just adorable, it's incredible. She is so talented and very, in some ways, very sure of that talent. And so she and I are writing a children's book called The Book of Norman, which is the dog that was at the farm. And then we're going to make an adult coloring book, and she will be doing the drawings, and they are already incredible. So, and the book is in Norman's voice. And when I showed her all of that, she started to cry. And because it's for her and for me, it's a really important, the dog has been a really important relationship. So, so again, all these odds and ends things you would have never dreamed of, but because we just stayed steady and said, let's try to take the emotion out of who's going to be the next farmer and understand our core values, I think we got it right. And it may not seem like that at the moment because, they're not doing things to earn $1 billion or whatever, but they are doing all the right stuff to sit on the land and figure out where in the heck do we go from here. So that's the story. Eduardo, you got anything else? I told you I'd just keep talking. You gotta jump right in, bud.
Well, I think that you covered it pretty well. I mean, it really did just happen like that. It does feel like it happened. I know that it had been something in the works for many years, actually, but when it really came down to it, Annie is somebody that when she puts her mind to it, she wants to get it done. So I think we sifted through what wasn't going to work and who the potential eventually be, narrowing it down to two. And I guess just circle back around, like initially when I was there during the interview process, it was very surreal because again, I could see myself on the other end as being the person hoping for that opportunity to be able to finally connect with some land and produce something, whatever it was, flower farming or just general produce or whatever the case may be. Basically, seeing an opportunity finally make my dreams come true. I didn't take it lightly, but I also felt like you have to be kind of hard. You have to press and ask tough questions. And fortunately, I wasn't the only one doing it. We had a good team that you saw there for the vetting committee. So everybody really stepped up. Everybody really asked the meaningful, difficult questions that had to be asked. But I honesty, authenticity, and a general feeling of integrity. And I think that you can't necessarily present that or really just see it on somebody. You get a feeling, and I don't know that that's a qualifying, kind of process for vetting people, but surely there were a few people that we just didn't feel were the right fit for one reason or another. Others were apparent very, very quickly. But I think when things really moved along to where we had our two candidates, Sarah and Keith, I think that they had all those values so much to the point that they were honest enough with themselves that this wasn't for them, and that, you know, this family that they were interacting with at Goatsuck potentially could make better use of this. And I think that really just helped facilitate that whole process for us, to have narrowed it down to a group of people that were honest with us and honest with themselves. And I think that that was one of the things that I valued the most. Everything else, like as far as, you know, learning hard skills and learning how to clean out a cistern, or, you know, update some solar panels, you can learn that stuff on YouTube. But having that honesty, having that determination, having that, you know, that strong work ethic, like you can't instill that in somebody. Some people are just born with that, or if it comes from wherever it comes from. But I thought those were key things to notice, that ultimately, again, Keith and Sarah were honest enough to say, you know, this is not for us, and that elevated Sarah and Jason to be the kind of the winner, so to speak, of this whole vetting process. And here we are. So it did kind of happen that fast, but fortunately, a lot of people, you know, made it easy for us with either their dishonesty or their honesty.
Well, I want to say something about the very last slide, and then I want to maybe turn it over to Ian and Christina for the not that slide, but the one just before it. Sorry. So that's a picture of where I live now, and that building was in disrepair and had to be. So that was the project that I was also doing when I was trying to move, was getting this building so it looks like this now, and developing, moving Warmke Farm there to make a food forest garden there in an urban setting. So it's been a huge project. So I know there's some questions about the lease. So just want to say a couple things about that. And then I'd like Christina and Ian maybe to speak more to that. And I know we're going to run out of time, but the thing about the initial lease was that once we were moved out, which was in August, we weren't able to take everything just yet. And so we had in a very short agreement that said we have the right to still come through December and we listed specific building materials and things that we needed for this building that you see right here. But we said we did not want any money, because we felt like they needed to save what they have, because they had things that they were going to need to do. Yes, they were moving into a farm that had left them all the equipment they needed to start raising chickens, to start raising goats, all the stuff for if they want to propagate plants, you know, all that stuff was there. However, that's later. They had to get themselves sorted, and they were going to need to have some revenue, some savings. And I don't know what their financial things were. I didn't ask. I didn't care. I felt like they brought everything to the table that would enable them to succeed, to make a living, not just make money. So anyway, I know there were some questions about the lease agreement, and so it's a little more complicated once we move past the point of just them being on the land, and we move the deed and everything into the Commons Trust. So
yeah, I'll just chime in really quick and share that the next part of this series is going to be with Sarah and Jason, that next generation steward that you just heard about and how they got selected. So they're going to be sharing the process from their perspective, and then also the lease that they're in currently, and also working with the Farmers Land Trust to create that next lease and being a part of the board. So all of that will be covered in this next session by Sarah and Jason. And super awesome. Great job, Annie. Great job, Eduardo. I think the only thing that you missed when you dropped off, Annie, is that I was just exclaiming to everyone how amazing it was that you had so much energy to give, because it took so much energy to host and entertain and have those people for interviews, but like all the phone time and the computer time, like it was such a big deal. And like not everybody would give the energy needed to make such a caring transition as you did. And are still.
Well, I handed off my baby, like leaving your child at school, and you want to make sure that they've got everything they need to stand up on both feet and put up with the bullies and the crap that gets levied at them. So that's how I see it. And I couldn't have picked two better people between you and Ian to do the whole thing with. And also the people in the pictures and Eduardo, I mean, that gave me lots of energy and inspired me tremendously to keep trying and thinking it through. And even today, you know, we're all still working on this. It's not just, oh, we got this land and now the farmer's sitting there. We're all still working on it. We're talking to people every day, really, in some form or fashion. We're raising money for the transition. All of that, it's still all going. It's just, I happen to be almost unpacked in another house. That's the difference. So anyway, I just thank you, Denise, for the opportunity to share the stories, because this was a dream come true for me when we pitched this idea to you last year at the OFA conference, the idea of having some kind of a thing. And then you and Ian and Christina were able to get it worked out. And that's just great, because I feel like we need to do these kind of dog and pony shows in order to help people to understand the system isn't that complicated, but it seems different than what we're used to. And so it's unique, and people need to hear about it in different ways from different people. And eventually one of us will make it clear to people that are really interested. So Denise, thanks. You deserve all the honor and praise for this, and I so appreciate it.
Well, thank
So-
you, Annie.
Thank you, Denise.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for that. I mean, this is what Central State University Extension wants to do, is bring these opportunities to people so we can learn new ways of doing things, quite honestly, and ones that really can work for us, especially when we talk about land access and preserving farmland. I know that we are running out of time, so I just want to remind everybody that we did record this session and all the sessions. I dropped in the chat the link to the playlist. This session will be added to that playlist when it's ready. So we do have all of this captured to be used beyond the live webinar series.